All right, Commissioner Fitzko, welcome back. I'm not sure where we left off last week when we were looking at the budget for FBR, the recommended budget. But if you, I don't know whether you want to walk through quickly the first half of the presentation, or do you want to pick up where you left off?
Okay, thank you for having us back. For the record, Danielle Fitzko, I'm the Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation, and I have with us our Director of Finance and Business Administration.
I'm Ansley Blimmer. Thanks for having me back.
So you're right, we did get to go through the whole presentation, but I certainly was a little speedy at the end. So happy to do any follow-up. I think based on some of the questions that we received last time, Ainsley may have pulled together a few additional slides. So I think she's prepared to go through that. And I was just going to pass it to Ainsley to sort of wrap up some of our budget pieces for FY26 proposed budget.
Thanks, Danny. I do still have a little bit of a to-do. I have all the data for a slide, but I wasn't able to quite pull it together for today. But I do plan on picking back up where we left off last Friday with our budget development form, referred to as our ups and downs as it reflects all the changes, whether up or down from the previous fiscal year. So if that sounds okay, I'll start off there. I'm just going to jump right on ahead. Okay, great. So our first appropriation is our administration appropriation. And we'll really quickly just point out how I'm going to go through each of these is that I'll go to each appropriation. We have 5 of them, and I'll go down by column, so by fund. And hopefully it's easy enough to follow. And please stop me if you have any questions. So for general fund for our administration appropriation, as Danny mentioned at the tail end of our testimony last week, we do have one new generally funded grants position. The position was recently transitioned from the Forestry Division to administration. It was created to assist in managing our $50 million federal grants portfolio, which I'd be remiss not to mention has doubled in the last 5 years. And then also plus some 18 million in state funded awards. And it was really a critical move to meet the growing needs of the department. And you'll see that reflected in salary and benefits under general fund. And Danny, I don't know if you want to, I know we talked about it really quickly at the end of the testimony, but if you have anything you want to expand on with that one.
Yeah, this was a really probably one of the hardest decisions I've actually had to make in this position so far was to move a position from the Forest Economy Program over to the business office. The way we operate within the administration is you can move if you have a vacant position, and that just happened to be the one vacant position we had at that time. So it did get moved to the business office, and it's reflected here in this budget. The administration division basically is our business office and then the commissioner's office.
So either you, Ansley, or Commissioner Fitzko, is there now technically a vacancy in the business development side, or that could be filled a year from now, or how might that work? Or
right.
is it temporarily lost or permanently lost?
Yes, you have a certain number of positions that are assigned to your department. You can so that position that was vacant in Forest Economy that position number is now moved to the administration. So you have that same number of positions. Okay. So there really isn't a vacant position there because it was moved.
So you won't be advertising and trying to fill that position, in other words.
Right. The only way we can bring on additional positions is we need the resources to be able to do that and justify the funding.
Sorry, and just don't mean to belabor it, but want to try and understand how was it that there was a vacant position there before that wasn't funded?
Well, there was we had a retirement in the Forest Economy Program. We had a long-term Forest Economy Program lead, which was Paul Frederick. He was a giant in the program. He retired. When we went to recruit his position, it was an internal recruitment. So Catherine Savidio took his position. And then it was Catherine's position that she previously held that was vacant, that was moved to the business office. Okay. So those funds, they was a general funded position. The position number and those funds moved to the administration.
Okay, thank you. Representative O'Brien.
So Danny, like, I guess I'm trying to think when there was a position that was created because the legislature, came up with resources / funding for you, like, was the climate forester like that, or was that newly created?
So the climate forester was a position that, back when I was director of forest, I wrote a grant to fund that position, the American Forest. And when you have grant money that comes in that's new, you request a limited service position. So it's not a permanent position. It's limited service based on the grant dollars. So I was able to get a limited service position for the climate forester. And now it has been extended because we brought in additional grant dollars to keep that position. So that is not a state funded position. It's all funded by federal grants. And we
Oh,
have
wow.
a limited service to it based on when the grant dollars go away.
Yep. Well, that's good to know.
But definitely a hugely important role. And we were the first in the nation to have a climate forester in Vermont. Then they all used our position description. So that's our admin budget, pretty heavily general funds. There's really no places to really bring in too much funding. Little bit of the special funds you see there is basically Park Special Fund and some of the federal dollars that we just hired on for Land and Water Conservation Fund position.
Move on to the next. This is our forestry appropriation. So general fund increased are largely due to upward pressures and increased benefits. We've also seen a large increase for some reason for transportation and travel related operating expenses, which is represented at the bottom of the first column. And you also see an increase in our internal service funds here as well. For clean water, we do have additional clean water funds. As Danny mentioned last week, much of this will support BMPs and also skidder bridges, and you'll see that represented in the contracted expenses. And then for federal, again, as Danny mentioned last week, we have several new federal awards expected in FY26 and 25 and 26, and you'll see that mostly in increased contracted expenses. Our urban community forestry grants will be closed out this year, which is why you see a decrease in subrecipient grants. And then we also just got AA1 approval for 4 federal Inflation Reduction Act IRA funded positions, which is where you'll see $446,000 in other personal services. However, since these are IRA, we are in a holding pattern right now on those positions. And the last thing I'll mention with this appropriation is an interdepartmental. We also touched on this last week, but we have that MOU with ACCD for recreational improvements to 3 access areas, and we're contracting out that work. So there's a $1 million contract expenses line item in the budget.
Representative O'Brien.
What's IRA again?
Inflation Reduction Act.
Oh, okay.
And then basically, the direction coming down from the federal government is there's a 90-day pause on those IRA grants, BIL grants, bilateral infrastructure law grants. And they're reviewing them one by one, but if they have anything related to diversity, equity, inclusion, or a climate lens, those are what they're looking for. They had started to release some grants, and they have pulled some back. We have not had any direction on ours so far.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay. The next slide is our parks appropriation. Excuse me. And the general fund increase in parks is almost exclusively due to internal service funds. Property and commercial insurance went up almost $500,000. Additionally, I think you guys took testimony on this morning, so this should be not news to you, but the new VYCC Serve, Learn, Earn program base funding was put into our FY25 budget as personal services. It should have been grants because it's subrecipient. It's granted back out. So you'll see a decrease in personal services for $500,000 and then an increase in grants, and we're just moving things around so that it's budgeted correctly. For the Park Special Fund, also mentioned last week, we budgeted for the landing craft or the boat in FY25, so that increased the budget by $1.2 million. So you'll see that now as a decrease. And then also we did do a lot of extensive exercises to review budget to actuals in the last few years. So we did a lot of right sizing and moving things around to more strategically budget. That said, since I have the opportunity to share it again, I'll just say that I want to highlight that mostly due to inflation, parks operating expenses have increased by 34% over the last 5 years. So we're seeing a lot of upward pressure on that budget specifically.
Representative Nelson.
You've increased by 34% over the last 5 years. Is that due to insurance and wages or inflation or all three combined?
All of it.
Wow.
Insurance is hitting the general fund more than the park special fund, but salaries and inflation absolutely are hitting the special fund. We also, so it's gotten a little bit better, but there was supply chain issues for a couple of years. And then our energy costs just went through the roof right after COVID. So again, there's that piece of it as well. But inflation has been kind of the steady increase over the last many years.
We have an internal working group now, just sort of looking at our opportunities for revenue. Recognizing that our revenue is not keeping up with our expenses, probably going forward. We'll have to make some tweaks.
Maybe not a question for you, Ainsley or Danny, or more. Has the state ever thought of self-insuring on their healthcare? I mean, the amount of money they must write out to Blue Cross, Blue Shield, or whoever versus the benefits received, the uses. Being such a large employer. I know some large employers self-insure, not just observation.
Yeah, I think it's out of my level of understanding totally. I don't know.
You can figure it out, though. I have faith in you. You can figure it out.
They just tell us how much to budget for.
I actually wanted to ask about the 500,000 that was moved down to the grant line. And I understand that's just really a clerical change, but does the department have to dedicate some staff time to a grant like that?
Yes. And in this, our relationship with VYCC, we do retain some administrative funds to do that.
Okay. Any other questions about this page?
Just when you're talking about inflation, I just wondered if you've calculated all the park fees, how much they've gone up just to stay at a state park. I bet it's not keeping up with inflation.
Right. Our park prices, our admissions to get in, and are all made through rule. So the last time we did a rule update was in August of 2022. So that's our opportunity to think ahead and start to right size, balance that sort of cost, revenue and expenses, really. And I think it's a recognition that we've had great attendance despite 2 years of some difficult weather challenges where we had several parks closed. So we stayed at just over 1 million visitors the past 2 years. So we had seen it steadily increase. We did see an increase last year, but it was after a dip because of 23 was not only did we have extreme flooding, that was a really wet summer, and that our visitation just goes down.
Representative Nelson?
Oh, no, I was
Okay.
leaving in agreement. Thank you. Oh.
Okay, I think we're good on that page.
Okie doke. The next is the Division of Lands Administration and Recreation. So we have 2 new grants program staff, and they're split across pretty much all the funding buckets. In general fund, our pressure is mostly due to increased benefits pressure. Our special fund increases are primarily due to planned land acquisitions. Got that a little bit last week. And then our federal increases are subrecipient awards for a Lands Water Conservation Fund, which is an increase of $2.2 million. And then we also have a special fund subrecipient grant for BAST that's increased by about $53,000, I believe. And interdepartmental, we do have a new MOU with VHCB. And Danny, I don't know if you want to talk about some of that state lands work with VHCB.
Sure, this is exciting that we're partnering with, well, we always partner with VHCB, but in particular here, they're providing funding to help us with our state lands planning. When Jim Duncan was in, you heard that we're behind on some of our state lands planning. We are bringing on a position that will help us do more plans, also some funds to help with data so we can work with GIS a little bit better. And I think also contracted so we can contract out some of our public engagement, which is so important when we're going out for public comment. So that's exciting to have that. You'll notice mostly with this division, it's a lot of money that we bring in that goes right out to communities and nonprofits on the recreation side.
Okay,
And our last slide is our final appropriation, which is our Parks and Forest Roads appropriation, which remains level funded from FY25. So no increases or decreases here.
completely
You'll
level
see at the
funded.
bottom, the totals for each of the different appropriations or funds.
And this fund is funding to help us maintain our state forest and parks access roads. So this is really helping us manage that 600 miles of roads that we have. Not necessarily, we have funding through clean water to help with like best practices where we know we have a pollution source. This is this regular maintenance of all those roads.
There's no inflationary increase here. Has there been an increase in previous years, or has this been held flat for a while?
This has been held flat for a while. It used to be up to like 700,000. It was at one point. It took a hit, and it's remained flat. We are fortunate to have the clean water funds that are allowing us to do some really good work on our roads, but that is limited to points of pollution. But we do have a request in for FY26 and FY27 capital funds that would also help with roads.
All right, Representative O'Brien.
Just off topic, but we heard earlier about changes to Act 250 last year in whatever act that was, and roads came up, and I just wondered, I was thinking about state parks and all your roads, and that you continue to build roads. Do you ever have to go through Act 250 permitting to put in roads?
Yeah, so last year, you're right, they had the road rule that was passed is planning through the LURB Land Use Review Board to go through some process of what that looks like. If we definitely go through Act 250, most of our roads are established. For us, it would be any new acquisition we're putting in a road, or if it was an expansion. And mainly it would be for our state parks, so probably the ones that would get review. But roads are exempt if they're for forestry access or recreation in Act 250 as well. So.
Oh, that's interesting. Thanks, Danny.
Okay, any other questions? All right, did you have anything else on your end that you wanted to mention about either what we've just been through or any other part of the budget?
No, I think yeah, I appreciate you bringing us back to go a little bit more in detail so you understand our budget. This, like we mentioned this year, this was just meeting sort of our base. Our increase was mostly it was either general fund was just to meet our upward pressures in staffing and internal services funds, and then also additional grants that we received. So it's pretty level.
Yeah. I may have asked this last week too, but just thinking again about vacancies, open positions across the department, how many, if any, do you have at the moment?
A few, not many. what typically happens is maybe somebody leaves and then we hire that, probably somebody from within. So there's like a little cascading of vacant positions, to be honest. So I would say on our classified positions, we go out for recruitment right away and we fill them. This is, so I think we're pretty full. We do have, as Ainsley mentioned, we did go after 6 new positions with federal funding. 5 of them are tied to IRA dollars, so we're holding on those, and they are limited service positions. So while we have the position numbers, we don't want to bring anybody on if we're going to potentially at risk of losing them. So I would say we really don't have any, right?
I don't think we
vacant-
have a single vacant position right now. So we are hiring 450 seasonal staff right around the corner.
Tell your family and friends.
Yeah.
All right, we will. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for coming back in again.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I appreciate the thought that you all put into your important roles. Hope to have a good break. I don't think I'll see you the rest of the week, so have a good break and we'll see you when you get back.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
take
Bye,
care. Did anybody have any reactions or comments or anything that we need to reflect further on? Good. Richard?
Yeah, that's good boy, we department of ag. Year and a half ago, and I wanted to ask her what Silas doing, and did you send him back to ag? What a nice young man to work with.
Okay, so we have
Can't really go without comment.
we have one final thing to do, I think, and that's to take a straw poll on the letter to appropriations. So everyone had a chance to review the letter, make some changes. Representative Supranat got those changes in. Anybody feels that you want to see the updated letter before we vote, we can print it out, or we can just say with the changes that we discussed. Work with it that way. So if that's okay with everybody, then Representative Lipsky, if you want to call the roll.
It will call the roll. So Chairman has asked us to vote on this letter before it to the House Appropriations Committee, and it's not a bill. So I'm going to start with Chairman Durfee.
Yes.
Yes. Vice Chair Supranat,
Yes.
Representative Morgan, Ranking Member,
Yes.
Representative Lipsky, yes. Representative O'Brien,
Yes.
Representative Burt is absent. Representative Nelson,
Yes.
Representative Bosley.
Yes.
The vote tally is 7 yes, 0 no, 1 absent.
Sidonia didn't vote.
Doesn't have a vote. But I'm gonna not put a reporter because nothing's being reported.
Yeah, good, okay.
So
Thank you.
Present the vote for straw polls, like could Greg, zoom in
You,
and say I vote or text us?
yeah, that's a great question, and I wanted to get the answer to that question last week when we were voting on the other letter, and I didn't. I think it's a little bit,
Right, because I had to leave, but I told you. I
Yes,
would say
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
no, I gave a,
Straw polls are different than votes.
For
Right,
sure, oh,
yeah. Now we do know that for a regular actual vote, you can vote remotely. But you do have to, 3 times, you have 3 days, but you do actually have to be on Zoom at the time. And we're not allowed to say, we'll check in with you later. So the solution to that is if somebody can't be here, if we want to get everybody's vote, which I would like to do every time, is schedule a vote for a time when people can hop on Zoom, even if it's just for a minute.
mean, today Greg wasn't here to read the letter, so we couldn't really, like, we could call him and say like, hey, what do you think? But he hasn't
Yeah.
seen it yet, so.
And
It's not there.
all the weighty things we do, this particular vote is going to change the world.
Not one absent.
It might, you never know.
Could be, I'm not underplaying. It's very
No.
important.
Before we go offline and get ready for the floor, is there anything else that anybody has today?
Is, universal school meals, I know we didn't put it in our letter, should that have been in there?
It is in there.
We did put it in.
There's a line.
There is. Oh,
Okay.
The bottom is.
Yeah, it's just really a passing reference.
Okay, yeah, as previously communicated, yeah, yes, does not support. Thank you, thank you.
And thank you for mentioning that because otherwise I wouldn't have thought to include it. So I think it's worth doing that. I just was, when I had to step out, I was asked to go next door, 2 doors down to Ways and Means to just testify on that letter and to answer questions that they might have had. So,
the letter about universal meals.
Yeah.
And we had some proxies participating in that. Do you recall what the vote was on that?
that was 8-0. Yeah.
8-0.
Yeah.
Made it, we got it unanimous.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for your work on the budget letter for, those requests. There's a lot that goes into that. So we will, I think we can go offline then and we'll be on the floor.